respect it. If you think chasing, begging, or proving your worth is what makes someone stay, then tonight may change the way you see love forever. Because sometimes the moment you stop fighting, stop forcing, and choose peace over pain is the exact moment he finally realizes what he lost. And by the time he turns around, you may no longer be standing where he left you. There comes a moment in almost every person's life when love stops feeling like love and starts feeling like confusion. You wake up every morning wondering why the calls got shorter, why the messages became colder, why the same person who once couldn't wait to hear your voice suddenly acts like your silence doesn't matter. You sit there replaying every memory in your mind, asking yourself questions nobody can answer for you. Did I say something wrong? Did I love too much? Was I not enough? And if you've ever been there, then listen carefully to me today, because this message may be exactly what your heart has been needed. You aim to hear. See, one thing life teaches us is that people rarely appreciate what they constantly have access to. That's not because they're evil. Sometimes people simply become comfortable. They stop noticing your sacrifices because you've made them look easy. They stop valuing your effort because they assume you'll always be there. And when someone believes you'll never leave, something dangerous happens. They stop treating your presence like a privilege. Now, I want you to understand something very important. Letting go peacefully is not weakness. Walking away quietly is not giving up. Choosing your peace over emotional chaos is not losing. Sometimes letting go peacefully is the loudest message you will ever send. Let me tell you a story. There was a woman who loved deeply, the kind of love that shows up even when it hurts. The kind of love that remembers birthdays, checks on dreams, forgives mistakes, and keeps believing even when reality says stop. She gave everything she had to this relationship. She stood beside a man through his struggles, encouraged him when nobody else believed in him, stayed patient during his confusing seasons, and loved him in ways he probably didn't even deserve. But over time, something changed. The good mornings became inconsistent. The affection became conditional. Conversations started feeling forced. She noticed he stopped trying, stopped asking questions, stopped caring about the little things that once mattered. And like so many people do, she tried harder. She texted more, loved harder, explained herself longer, became more understanding, made excuses for his distance. She convinced herself he was just stressed, confused, overwhelmed, but deep down she knew something painful. She was fighting for someone who had stopped fighting for her. Now let me ask you something. Have you ever tried so hard to save something that you started losing yourself in the process? Because that's what heartbreak does. It doesn't usually break you all at once. Sometimes it happens slowly, quietly, piece by piece. You stop laughing the same, stop sleeping peacefully, stop recognizing yourself. You become emotionally exhausted trying to hold together something that only one person is carrying. And one night, after crying more tears than she could count, this woman finally sat alone and realized something. She could not force someone to value what they had become blind to. And right there in that silence, she made a decision that changed everything. Not revenge, not anger, not manipulation, peace. She stopped arguing, stopped begging for attention, stopped explaining her worth, stopped trying to convince someone to choose her. And for the first time in a long time, she chose herself. Now understand this. When most people hear letting go, they think it means bitterness. They think it means blocking someone with anger, posting revenge quotes online, trying to make someone jealous, or pretending you never cared. But peaceful detachment is different. Peaceful detachment says, I loved you honestly. I gave what I could, but I will no longer abandon myself trying to keep someone who isn't sure about me. That kind of peace changes a person, because when you stop chasing, something unexpected happens. You begin healing. You sleep better. You laugh again. You stop checking your phone every 5 minutes hoping for a message. You stop tying your happiness to someone else's mood. And little by little, your confidence starts returning. Now, here's what many people don't understand. When you let go peacefully, without drama, without revenge, without trying to hurt him back, something shifts, because human beings are strange. Sometimes people don't realize your value while you're standing in front of them. Sometimes they only recognize your importance after your energy disappears, after your attention is gone, after the comfort they took for granted is no longer available. See, your presence was louder than you realized. The support, the kindness, the emotional safety, the encouragement, the love. People often underestimate these things when they're constantly available, but absence has a way of revealing truth. And one day, maybe weeks later, maybe months later, he notices something. The silence feels different. No more checking in. No more long emotional messages. No more reassurance. No more chasing. And suddenly, the space you once filled becomes impossible to ignore. That's when many people start asking questions. Why isn't she reaching out? Why did she suddenly stop? Does she not care anymore? Did I lose someone real? But hear me carefully. The goal is not to make him miss you. The goal is not to pull him back. The goal is healing. Because if your healing only exists to get someone's attention, then you're still emotionally trapped. Real growth happens when peace becomes more important than proving a point. And let me tell you something powerful that most people never understand. Confidence is attractive. Peace is attractive. Self-respect is attractive. Not because it manipulates people into returning, but because it reminds them of the value they overlooked. A person who constantly chases says, "Please choose me." But a person who walks away peacefully says, "I know my worth even if you couldn't see it." And that energy changes everything. Now, I know somebody is watching this, is hurting right now. Maybe he ignored you. Maybe he left. Maybe he stopped trying. Maybe you gave everything and still got heartbreak in return. And if that's your story, hear me clearly. You do not have to destroy yourself trying to keep someone who refuses to appreciate your presence. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is love somebody enough to let reality speak for itself. No fighting, no begging, no emotional warfare, just peace. Because peace says I deserve consistency. Peace says I deserve everything. Peace says I deserve someone who sees my value without me having to prove it every single day. And when you finally choose that kind of peace, life begins changing in ways you never expected. You stop shrinking yourself to fit inside someone else's uncertainty. You stop questioning your worth every time somebody becomes emotionally unavailable. You stop blaming yourself for someone else's inability to recognize good love. And maybe, just maybe, the person who walked away begins realizing what they had. But by then, something beautiful has happened. You've grown. You've healed. You've remembered who you are. And suddenly, whether they return or not no longer controls your happiness because your peace became stronger than your pain. There is something powerful that happens when a person finally gets tired of carrying emotional weight that was never meant for them alone. Not anger, not bitterness, just exhaustion. The kind of exhaustion that quietly whispers to your soul, you can't keep breaking yourself to save someone who refuses to meet you halfway. And for many people, that moment becomes the beginning of transformation. See, most people think heartbreak starts when somebody leaves, but heartbreak often starts long before that. It starts when effort becomes one-sided. It starts when communication turns into confusion. It starts when you find yourself overthinking every text, analyzing every silence, wondering if you're asking for too much when all you really wanted was honesty, care, and consistency. You know what hurts more than losing someone? Losing yourself while trying to hold on to them. Losing your confidence because someone became distant. Losing your peace because somebody changed. Losing your joy because somebody stopped showing up emotionally. And that's what so many good-hearted people do. They become emotional detectives in relationships, looking for clues, searching for hidden meanings, trying to fix problems they don't have. To create. He's just busy. He's going through something. He'll change. He still cares deep down. And maybe some of that is true. But listen to me carefully. Love should not feel like emotional starvation. You should not have to beg for communication. You should not feel lonely beside someone who says they care about you. There's a difference between difficult seasons and emotional neglect. And sometimes people become so afraid of losing someone that they stay loyal to situations that are already breaking them. Let me tell you another story. There was a man who thought he had all the time in the world. He had someone who truly loved him. Someone patient, kind, understanding. The kind of woman who believed in him during his worst moments. She checked on him, supported him, listened to him, forgave him when he messed up. And because she always stayed, he stopped noticing how valuable she really was. Not intentionally, he just became comfortable. He assumed she would always be there. He thought no matter how distant he became, no matter how little effort he gave, she would understand. Because she always had before. That's the dangerous thing about familiarity. People sometimes mistake loyalty for permanence. They think love means unlimited patience, unlimited forgiveness, unlimited chances. But one thing life will teach you is this: even the strongest heart gets tired. Even the kindest soul reaches a limit. Even the most loving person eventually says, I can't keep pouring from an empty cup. And one day, without yelling, without revenge, without chaos, she changed. Her energy changed. She became quieter, not cold, not angry, just calm. She stopped arguing about things she had explained 100 times, stopped asking for effort, stopped chasing emotional closeness, stopped trying to convince somebody to care. And when people stop fighting, something strange happens. That's when others finally start paying attention. Because, see, arguments still carry energy. Crying still carries energy. Begging still carries energy. But peace? Peace feels unfamiliar when someone expected you to stay emotionally attached forever. Suddenly, he noticed the silence. No emotional paragraphs. No desperate calls. No pleading for connection. And that quiet unsettled him, because for the first time, he felt what absence actually meant. Now hear me carefully. This is not a game. This is not psychology manipulation. This is not ignore him so he comes running. Number. Because if your peace becomes a strategy, it stops being peace. Real peaceful detachment happens when your soul finally decides it deserves rest. When your heart says, I can love you and still walk away. That right there is maturity, because immature love says, I'll destroy myself to keep you. Mature love says, I care about you, but I care about myself too. And that lesson changes lives. See, many people don't return because they suddenly fall. You ail back in love. Sometimes people return because distance gives them perspective. Perspective they never had when you were always available. Think about it. Have you ever lost something valuable and only realized its importance after it was gone? Maybe it was a friendship, an opportunity, a family member, a moment in time. Life has a strange way of teaching us value through absence, and relationships are no different. Sometimes people only understand emotional safety after they no longer have it. Sometimes they only miss loyalty after inconsistency replaces it. Sometimes they only appreciate kindness after meeting people who don't love the same way you did. And when that realization hits, regret arrives. Not because you punished them, not because you made them jealous, but because reality finally introduced consequences. Now I know some of you are thinking, but what if he never comes back? That's a fair question. What if he doesn't? Then hear me closely. You win. I know that sounds hard to believe when your heart hurts, but listen, the real victory was never about getting somebody back. The real victory is getting yourself back, getting your confidence back, getting your joy back, getting your peace back, getting your self-respect back. Because too many people spend years waiting for closure from someone who never learned how to give it. And while they wait, life passes them by. Days turn into months. Months turn into years. And they remain emotionally stuck in a chapter that already ended. You cannot heal if you keep reopening wounds. You cannot grow if you stay emotionally tied to disappointment. And let me tell you something Steve Harvey style truth would remind you of. God, life, destiny dash, whatever word speaks to your spirit dash, cannot bring something healthier into your life if your hands are still tightly holding onto what's hurting you. Sometimes release creates room. Sometimes loss creates clarity. Sometimes NGS protect you from futures you were never meant to survive. You don't always understand it immediately. Pain clouds perspective. Heartbreak makes everything feel personal. But time has a funny way of revealing things. One day you wake up and realize the relationship you cried over taught you standards. The heartbreak that broke you taught you strength. The rejection that wounded your confidence taught you self-worth. And suddenly, the thing you once begged to keep becomes a thing you thank life for teaching you through. But let me be honest with you about something. Healing is uncomfortable. You will miss them. You will replay memories. You will wonder if you made the wrong decision. There will be nights where loneliness whispers lies into your heart. There will be moments where you almost text them. Moments where memories hit harder than logic. That's normal. Healing doesn't happen in a straight line. Some days you feel strong. Some days you feel broken again. But don't confuse temporary sadness with the wrong decision. Missing somebody does not always mean they belonged in your life. Sometimes you miss familiarity. Sometimes you miss potential. Sometimes you miss who they used to be. But growth teaches you something powerful. Love without consistency becomes confusion. Care without effort becomes emptiness. Promises without action become pain. And one day, after enough healing, you stop romanticizing people who repeatedly hurt your peace. You stop begging for bare minimum effort. You stop chasing what should naturally choose you. And that right there is when your power starts returning. Because the strongest people are not the ones who never get hurt. The strongest people are the ones who hurt deeply and still choose growth over bitterness, still choose peace over revenge, still choose healing over obsession. And strangely enough, that peaceful version of you, that healed version, that confident version, that's the exact version that makes somebody realize what they lost. But by then, you're no longer trying to be found. There's a truth about relationships that nobody tells you when your heart is breaking. Sometimes the very thing you think will push somebody away forever becomes the thing that finally wakes them up. Not your tears, not your begging, not your explaining, your peace. See, when people are used to your constant presence, they sometimes mistake your love for something ordinary. They assume your patience has no limit. They think your forgiveness comes automatically. They begin believing your heart is a place they can return to anytime they feel lonely, confused, or unfinished. But life doesn't work that way, because every person eventually reaches a moment where they stop surviving emotionally and start choosing themselves. And that choice can look very quiet from the outside. You stop arguing, stop defending your value, stop trying to prove why you deserve. You effort. You stop chasing clarity from somebody committed to confusion. And for the first time in a long time, you become still. Now, let me tell you something about stillness. Stillness scares people who expected access to your emotions forever, because chaos they understood. Your emotional messages, familiar. Your frustration, familiar. Your sadness, familiar. But your silence, your peace, that's new. That's unsettling. That's when questions begin showing up in their mind. What happened to her? Why isn't she reaching out? Why does it suddenly feel like I'm losing something? And this is where many people make a mistake. The moment they feel someone pulling back, they rush back in. They answer instantly, reopen wounds, drop their boundaries, forget the lessons they just fought to learn. Why? Because healing can feel lonely before it feels freeing. And loneliness tricks people into returning to situations that already hurt them. Listen carefully to me. Not confuse loneliness with love. Sometimes you are not missing the person. You are missing the habit, missing the routine, missing the idea of what you hope things could become. And hope is dangerous when it keeps you tied to inconsistency. Because hopeful people often wait years for potential, years for someone to become emotionally available, years for someone to finally value them correctly, years for promises that never become actions. And before they know it, they've sacrificed too much of themselves trying to rescue a relationship that only one person was protecting. Let me share something powerful with you. There was a woman who spent years loving somebody who gave her just enough attention to stay, but never enough commitment to feel secure. Every time she tried to leave, he came back. Not with change, not with consistency, just enough emotion to restart the cycle. A sweet message, a promise, an apology, temporary effort. And because she loved she believed this time would be different, but eventually she realized something painful. Some people don't miss you. They miss access to you. There's a difference. Missing you means growth, reflection, responsibility, change behavior. Missing access means convenience, loneliness, control, comfort. And if somebody comes back, you must learn to ask better questions. Not, do they miss me? But have they changed? Not, do they love me? But can they love me in a healthy way? Not, what do they say? But what do their actions consistently show? Because words are easy. Promises are easy. Temporary effort is easy. Consistency reveals truth. Anybody can show up when they feel lonely. Anybody can miss you when life gets hard. Anybody can say beautiful things when they fear losing access. But real growth shows itself over time. And that's where peaceful detachment becomes powerful. Because when you've healed, you stop accepting bread. You crumbs just because you're hungry for love. You stop settling for confusion because you're afraid of loneliness. You stop mistaking chemistry for compatibility. And suddenly your standards rise, not because you became cold, but because pain taught you wisdom. Now, let me tell you something about men, women, and human nature in general. People often realize value in hindsight, when comfort disappears, when silence grows louder, when someone who once gave endless energy suddenly stops pouring. And sometimes that realization hits hard. I've seen people come back years later saying, I didn't know what I had. I was immature. I was afraid. I took you for granted. And sometimes they mean it. Sometimes people really do grow. Sometimes heartbreak teaches them lessons too. But hear me carefully. Someone realizing your value late does not mean you owe them another chance. Growth should not erase accountability. Love should not require self-abandonment. And forgive. SS does not always mean reunion. That right there is wisdom. You can forgive somebody and still say, I wish you well, but I won't return to what broke me. You can love somebody and still recognize they are not healthy for your future. That takes strength, because healing isn't just learning how to let go. Healing is learning how not to go back to what damaged your peace. And if you're watching this while your heart feels heavy, let me speak directly to you. I know what it feels like to wait for texts that never come, to replay conversations in your head, to wonder why somebody changed, to feel rejected by somebody you gave your heart to. Heartbreak humbles people. It makes strong people cry, makes confident people doubt themselves, makes loving people question their worth. But let me remind you of something important. Someone else's inability to value you does not reduce your value. Read that again in your spirit. A diamond doesn't become worthless because somebody failed to recognize what they were holding. Your kindness is still valuable. Your loyalty is still valuable. Your heart is still valuable. Your love is still valuable. And one day, whether it's him or someone else, somebody emotionally healthy will recognize what somebody else overlooked. But first, you have to stop abandoning yourself. Stop shrinking. Stop settling. Stop convincing yourself half love is enough. Because you deserve reciprocity. You deserve emotional safety. You deserve consistency. And when you finally understand that, something shifts inside you. You stop chasing closure. You stop chasing explanations. You stop chasing people. You start choosing peace. And strangely enough, peace has a way of attracting clarity. Peace has a way of restoring confidence. Peace has a way of making people realize exactly what they lost. But by then, you're no longer waiting at the door. You're finally building a life that no longer depends on who stayed or who left.